should have buried my son at 9 years old. That's not exaggeration. That's arithmetic. The kind you do later, when the smoke has cleared and the firefighters stop pretending there was ever a chance. If I had driven us home that night, if I had told him he was imagining things again, they would have pulled 2 bodies from the rubble before sunrise. Mine and my kids. But back then, standing in the airport pickup lane, I still thought my life was normal, boring, predictable, safe in the way only a man who hasn't been tested yet believes. It was a Thursday night at MSP Airport. Cold enough to sting your lungs when you breathed in too fast. The kind of cold that makes everything feel sharp. My wife, Vanessa Hale, leaned in through the open window and kissed my cheek. Quick, efficient, like checking something off a list. I drove my car in this morning for meetings, she said, already adjusting her blazer. You've got the Tahoe all weekend. Denver. 2 nights. Back Friday. Normal. That word again. She grabbed her carry-on and disappeared through the sliding doors without looking back. Blonde hair pulled tight. Black blazer. The exact version of herself she wore for other people. I didn't notice anything off because I wasn't looking for it. Behind me, my son Evan sat too still in his booster seat. 8 years old. Dinosaur backpack cinched so tight around his fingers, his knuckles had gone pale. Evan was a watcher. The kind of kid who noticed patterns before adults admitted they existed. I pulled away from the curb, merged into traffic, already thinking about leftovers and emails and how quiet the house would be without her voice filling it. That's when his hand locked onto my arm. Not a tap, a clamp, hard enough that I actually flinched. "Dad," he said, barely louder than the hum of the engine. "Don't take me home." I caught his eyes in the rearview mirror and felt that familiar irritation rise. Another worry, another thing I'd have to explain away with logic and reassurance. I opened my mouth to do exactly that. His voice broke first. "Please believe me this time. This time." Those 2 words cut deeper than the grip, because there had been other times. The van, he said, kept parking across the street after dark. The phone call he overheard at 2 in the morning. The way he froze whenever his mom's office door was locked. I brushed it all off. Told him he was imagining things. Told him the world wasn't dangerous. Told him to go back to sleep. Now his face was drained of color. His eyes weren't darting. They were locked. Focused. Alert in a way no 8-year-old should ever have to be. This wasn't anxiety. This wasn't imagination. This was fear from knowledge. Rain streaked across the windshield as the exit sign for our neighborhood came into view. Maple Grove. 20 minutes to our driveway. The house I'd designed myself. Every system calculated. Every risk mitigated. I'm an engineer. I calculate probabilities for a living, so I did the math. If I believed him and he was wrong, we lost a night. If I didn't believe him and he was right, we didn't wake up. The numbers weren't close. I changed lanes without saying a word. "Okay," I said quietly. "I believe you." He exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. "You do?" "I do, and I'm sorry I didn't before." He nodded fast, like he didn't trust the moment to last. Instead of turning into our subdivision, I parked across the street from our house. Engine off, lights dead, tucked beneath a line of old oak trees that threw long shadows across the road. The house looked normal, porch light on, curtains drawn, no broken windows, no movement. Evan dozed off against the window. I kept my eyes on the front door like it was about to confess something. By 10:40 that night, even I started to doubt him. I leaned forward, fingers brushing the ignition, already rehearsing the apology I'd owe him for scaring himself. That's when a vehicle rolled down the block with its headlights off. Not fast, not slow, careful. A dark van, hard to tell the color in the rain. It crept past 2 houses, then stopped directly in front of mine. My pulse kicked hard against my ribs. 2 men stepped out. Hoodies up, gloves on, faces covered. No hesitation, no nerves, They moved like this wasn't their first time. I reached for my phone. One of them pulled something from his pocket. A key. My front door unlocked with a soft, polite click. They walked inside my house like they belonged there. My mouth went dry. How do they have a key? I whispered. Evan didn't look at me. Mom gave it to them, he said. And then the smell hit. Sharp. Chemical. Wrong. Gasoline. My brain cataloged it automatically. Accelerant. Petroleum-based. Not natural gas. Not an accident. Flashlight beams swept through the windows. Fast. Methodical. Like they were counting steps they'd already memorized. Then orange light bloomed inside the house. Too fast. Too even. Glass shattered from the heat. They walked back out calm, unhurried, climbed into the van, and disappeared down the street just as sirens began to wail in the distance. Someone else had already called it in. The house burned hot, violent, like it had been waiting. Evan started crying. Quiet. Broken sobs like he was afraid sound might still matter. "I told you," he whispered. "I told you, Dad." I pulled him against my chest, pressed his face into my jacket, felt his body shaking. "You saved us," I said. "You saved our lives." And he had. If we'd been inside, sleeping, we would have had minutes, maybe less. Doors locked, smoke fast, fire fed on purpose, as firefighters fought a battle they couldn't win. I watched from the shadows and made a call I never thought I'd make. Not to the police, to a name my father had pressed into my hand years ago, standing by his hospital bed, voice weak but certain. "If you ever need help beyond what the cops can do, call her." From across the street, through smoke and flashing lights, I watched my wife arrive. Not from a hotel, not from a plane, from an Uber. Vanessa stepped out, saw the ruins, and her performance began. Screaming, crying, collapsing into a cop's arms. Oh my God, my family. The fire chief told her they hadn't found any bodies yet. For half a second, her face didn't show grief. It showed fear. Then her phone buzzed. A message I'd just sent. "Hey babe, Evan and I grabbed a late dinner. Home soon." Her face went white. Bone white. She scanned the crowd, the shadows, the street. She knew. And that's when I understood the truth that still keeps me awake at night. My wife didn't leave town for work. She left town to make sure she wouldn't be there when the house burned. I didn't confront her that night. That surprises people when they hear the story later. They ask why I didn't run straight into the flames, why I didn't scream her name, why I didn't drag her in front of the cops and point until my arm gave out. The truth is simpler and uglier. I was scared. Not of her, of how much I'd already missed. I drove us away slow. No headlights, like I was sneaking out of my own life. Evan sat curled in the seat, thumb in his mouth, eyes locked on the burning glow shrinking behind us. He didn't ask questions. He didn't cry loud. He'd already done his job. Saved us. I checked into a cheap motel off the highway, the kind with flickering lights and a lobby that smells like old coffee and disinfectant. Paid cash, fake name, no paper trail. Evan fell asleep in seconds. Kids do that when their bodies finally realize they're safe. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to his breathing, steady and soft, and felt something inside my chest crack open, because that was the moment it hit me. I hadn't been there. Not really. For years. I told myself I was doing the right thing. Long hours, late nights, weekend emails, missed dinners, missed bedtime stories, all of it justified by the same sentence. I'm providing. I said it so often it became a shield, a way to avoid noticing how quiet my house had gotten, how my wife started living her life in compartments I wasn't allowed into, how my son learned to watch instead of talk, because talking never changed anything. I thought being steady was enough. I was wrong. The signs were there. God, they were everywhere. Vanessa locking her office door, taking calls outside, guarding her phone like it held state secrets, her eyes glazing over when Evan talked about school, The way she referred to him as a lot when she thought I wasn't listening. I told myself marriages go through phases. I told myself parenting was hard. I told myself I was tired. What I didn't tell myself was the truth. I had stopped protecting my own home. That night, sitting in that motel room, I watched my son sleep and understood something that made my hands shake. He trusted me, even when I didn't deserve it. He warned me, more than once. And I chose comfort over curiosity. I didn't sleep. I sat on the bathroom floor with my back against the tub, my father's old business card in my hand. The edges were bent, the ink slightly faded. He'd given it to me the years ago, when I still thought I knew my wife. "She's sharp," he'd said once, staring at her a little too long across the dinner table. "But she's not warm." I'd gotten defensive, told him he was old-fashioned, told him he didn't understand modern marriages. He didn't argue. He just handed me the card at the hospital, weeks before he died. "If you ever need help that isn't polite," he'd said, voice thin but sure, "call her. Don't tell your wife." I'd laughed then. I wasn't laughing now, because somewhere between the fire and the sirens, my life had split clean in two. The man I was before that night, and the man who now understood he'd been living next to a stranger. At dawn, I made a decision, not out of anger, out of necessity. I wasn't going to the police yet, not because I didn't trust them, but because I finally understood how this game worked. Vanessa had an alibi, cameras, timestamps, a performance ready for an audience. All I had was an 8-year-old and a burned house. That wasn't enough. I needed proof. I needed patience. And I needed to act like the man she thought she'd already buried. So I kissed Evan's forehead, tucked the blanket tighter around his shoulders, and left him sleeping. Then I drove back toward the airport, not as a husband waiting for his wife to land, as a man who had finally accepted that someone had tried to kill his child, and that the person who planned it was already grieving on camera. I parked in the long-term garage, just as the sky started to lighten. That dull gray before sunrise, where everything looks honest because there's nowhere for shadows to hide. Level 3. Concrete still wet from the night air. Rows of cars sitting quiet, like they were keeping secrets. I didn't rush. Rushing makes mistakes. Mistakes get people killed. Vanessa's SUV sat exactly where she said it would. Silver, clean, ordinary, the kind of car nobody looks twice at. That should have been my first clue years ago. She was always good at being unremarkable when it mattered. I sat there with the engine off and asked myself one last question. What if I'm wrong? What if this was some freak coincidence? What if my son misheard? What if the fire really was an accident and I was about to destroy my own life chasing a nightmare? Then I saw his face again in the rearview mirror. The fear, the certainty. I got out of the truck. The spare key slid into the lock smooth as butter. I'd made it years ago, back when redundancy felt like smart engineering instead of paranoia. She never knew it existed. The door opened. Her perfume hit me first. Sweet, familiar, wrong. Then something else, sharp, chemical. My stomach tightened. I searched the way I was trained to search. Systematic, methodical, no panic. Glove box first. Empty but for receipts and napkins. Center console. Sunglasses. Lip balm. A folded parking pass. Under the passenger seat, my fingers brushed plastic. A phone? Cheap. Black. No case. No scratches. Burner. My pulse spiked, but my hand stayed steady. I powered it on. 15% battery. One saved contact. See, I didn't sit down. I didn't breathe deep. I just scrolled. 5 days ago. I can't keep living this lie. I want to be with you. Be with you. Her reply came fast. Then do it. Insurance money. Fresh start. 4 days ago. I'm scared. What if something goes wrong? Don't be. I found professionals. It'll look like his gas system failed. His design. No one questions an engineer's mistake. My vision tunneled. 3 days ago, I got the cash. 50,000. Good girl. Leave the key under the back doormat. Thursday night. They'll handle everything. I swallowed hard and kept reading. Later that same day. What about the kid? The response made my hands start shaking. Collateral damage. You want a new life or not? There it was. Written like a footnote. Like an inconvenience. I dropped the phone and leaned forward, dry heaving onto the concrete, until my eyes burned. My son's face flashed in my mind. 8 years old. Dinosaur backpack. Trusting me. She called him collateral damage. I forced myself back upright and kept searching. Glove box. A folded receipt. Cash withdrawal. 50,000. Monday morning. Her signature. Center console. Airport. Locker key. Number scratched into the plastic. The trunk. That's where it finally broke me. My blueprints. The ones I kept at home. The gas system layout I designed to code, and then beyond it. Because I always overbuilt when it came to safety. Covered in red pen. Her handwriting. Circles. Arrows. Notes. Sabotage here. Delay ignition. Make it look accidental. Blame design flaw. She'd studied my work. Learned it. Weaponized it. I slid down against the bumper and sat there shaking. The smell of concrete and gasoline and betrayal filling my lungs. I built that house to keep my family safe. She turned it into a furnace. I took pictures of everything. The phone. The texts. The receipts. The blueprints. Sent copies to an email she'd never find. Then I gathered the physical evidence, wrapped it in an old hoodie, and put it in my truck. I let myself break for exactly 5 minutes. Then I stood up. Because grief is a luxury you earn after your child is safe. I drove back to the motel as the city woke up around me. Commuters. Coffee cups. Normal life marching on like nothing had happened. Evan was still asleep when I got back. Curled on his side. Thumb tucked under his chin. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched him breathe. That was the moment the last illusion died. I wasn't married to a woman who made a mistake. I was married to someone who had planned my son's death with a pen and a smile. And now that I knew, I wasn't going to survive this by being reasonable. I was going to survive it by being precise. By the time Evan woke up, I already had a plan forming. And for the first time since the fire, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was hunting. By the time Evan woke up, I'd already washed the smell of gasoline off my hands twice. It was still there. Not on my skin, in my head. He sat up slow, eyes searching the room like he expected flames to crawl out of the walls. When he saw me, really saw me, his shoulders dropped a fraction. "We're still here," he said, not a question. "Yeah," I told him. "We are." I didn't lie to him. Not anymore. I just didn't tell him everything. 8 years old is old enough to sense danger, not old enough to carry the full weight of it. We ate vending machine snacks for breakfast. Powdered donuts. Orange juice that tasted like plastic. He didn't complain. He never did. That should have bothered me more than it did. I let him watch cartoons while I sat at the little desk by the window, spreading everything out. Phone photos, screenshots, receipts. The blueprints with her handwriting carved into them like scars. This wasn't rage anymore. This was work. I called the number on my father's card just after 9. I expected voicemail. I expected hesitation. I didn't expect recognition. "I know who you are," she said after I told her my name. Calm. Grounded. No shock. "Your father warned me you might call one day." That sentence alone told me I was in the right place. I met her downtown an hour later. Old brick building. Narrow hallways. The kind of office where nothing is decorative because everything is She didn't interrupt while I talked. She didn't gasp when I showed her the texts. When she reached the line about collateral damage, she closed her eyes for a moment, just long enough to feel it. "This is enough to bury her," she said finally. "But only if we do this clean." "Clean how?" My voice sounded farther away than I expected. "Controlled," she said. "If you rush, You lose leverage. If you go to the police right now, her lawyer starts screaming planted evidence and emotional manipulation. I hated that she was right. We need her voice, she continued. We need her believing she's already won. I stared at the burner phone in my hand. She thinks we're dead. A thin smile crossed her face. Not cruel. Professional. Then we let her keep thinking that. Just long enough. That's when I understood the shift. Up until that moment, I'd been reacting to her moves, cleaning up after her decisions, chasing the damage. Now, we were going to make one. A detective joined us shortly after. Quiet guy, tired eyes. The kind of man who's seen enough to stop pretending evil is rare. He didn't sugarcoat it. She hired men to burn a house with a child inside, he said flatly. That's not desperation. That's intent. He laid it out. Public place. Wire. Let her talk. Let her explain. Let her incriminate herself without realizing she already had. I nodded through all of it like I was listening to instructions at work. Inside, something was rewiring. That afternoon, Evan asked me if his mom was coming back. I didn't answer right away. No, I said finally. Not today. He thought about that. Then nodded. Good. That word hurt more than anything else he'd said. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. I tried to remember the woman I married, the laugh, the vacations, the nights that felt real. Every memory felt compromised, like finding rot in a beam you trusted to hold weight. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is loud, sloppy, predictable. What I felt was colder, deliberate. By the time the sun came up, I wasn't a husband trying to understand his wife. I was a father preparing to make sure the woman who called his son collateral damage never got to explain it away. And the next time I saw her, she was going to talk, whether she meant to or not. Saturday morning came too fast. The kind of morning where your body feels awake before your mind is ready to catch up. Evan was still asleep when I sat on the edge of the bed and slipped the wire under my shirt. Thin, light, cold against my skin. The detective showed me how to tape it so it wouldn't shift, how to breathe so my voice stayed even, how to let silence do most of the work. Don't argue, he told me. Let her explain herself. People like her always do. People like her. I hated how right that sounded. I knelt beside the bed and brushed Evan's hair back from his forehead. He stirred, eyes fluttering open. You gonna be gone long? He asked. Just a little bit. He studied my face like he always did, searching for cracks. You coming back? Not a question, I promise, I said. And for the first time in days, I meant it without fear. The cafe was busy in that weekend way. Steam hissing, cups clinking, people laughing too loud because nothing in their lives had burned down yet. I arrived early, sat where the detective told me, back to the wall, clear line of sight to the door. My hands were steady. That scared me more than if they weren't. At a few minutes past 10, the door opened and she walked in. Vanessa, black dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back just enough to look grieving, not careless. She scanned the room, searching for the fire investigator she thought she was meeting. Then her eyes found me. I watched the recognition hit in stages: confusion, shock, fear. The blood drained from her face so fast I thought she might pass out. Grant, she whispered. My name sounded wrong in her mouth. I didn't stand. I didn't reach for her. I just looked at her. Sit down, I said. She did. Her hands were shaking when she reached for mine. I pulled mine back. They said they found remains, she said fast. I didn't understand how. They didn't, I said. Calm. Flat. Because we weren't there. Silence stretched between us. She swallowed. Where's Evan? With me, I said. Alive. Because he heard you. Her eyes flicked away. Too quick. He heard you talking, I continued. About the key. About Thursday night. She shook her head. You're not making sense. I slid the photos across the table. one by one. The burner phone, the texts, the blueprints. Her breath caught. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "Your car," I said. "Long-term parking, level 3. She leaned back slowly, studying me like she was recalculating. For a second, I almost saw the woman I married. Then it was gone. She laughed. Low. Bitter. Honest. "You were always smarter than I gave you credit for," she said. "Why?" I asked. My voice cracked despite myself. "Why our son?" She tilted her head. "You want the truth? I want you to say it." She leaned forward, voice dropping. "Because I was done. 15 years of being invisible, of living inside your schedules and your projects. Evan was a complication." The word landed like a punch. "A complication," I repeated. She shrugged. "Collateral damage. You saw the message." My chest burned. She straightened, eyes cold now. "I hired them. I gave them the key. I paid cash. I planned it so it would look like your mistake. And yes, Evan was supposed to be there." The cafe went quiet around us. I stood up slowly. "Say it again," I said, louder this time. Her jaw tightened. Then she snapped. "I hired 2 men to burn the house with you and our son inside. I wanted the insurance money. I wanted out." Badges appeared. Hands grabbed her arms. The sound she made wasn't a scream. It was a howl. Pure, animal rage at being exposed. As they dragged her away, she looked back at me once. Not angry, relieved, like the pretending was finally over. I sat back down, heart pounding, wire still warm against my skin. The detective's voice came through my earpiece. "We got her." I closed my eyes, not because it was over, but because for the first time since that night at the airport, I knew my son was safe. I didn't feel relief. That's the part people don't like when I tell it later. They expect relief. Closure. Some clean emotional ending where the villain is cuffed and the good guy finally exhales. That didn't happen. What I felt was exhaustion so deep it sat in my bones. They led her out past the windows, hands behind her back, head high, like she was still auditioning for someone. The cafe slowly came back to life. Cups clinked again. Someone laughed too loud. Life moved on like it always does. I stayed seated until the detective touched my shoulder. "You did good," he said. I nodded, but the word good didn't fit anything that had happened. I drove back to the motel in silence. No radio, no calls, just the hum of the road and the replay in my head of her voice saying collateral damage like she was ordering coffee. Evan was sitting on the bed when I walked in, legs crossed, watching cartoons he wasn't really watching. He looked up the second the door closed. "She's not coming back, is she?" "No," I said. "She isn't." He nodded once. Then he asked the question that shattered me. "Did she want me gone?" I didn't lie. I sat on the edge of the bed, took his hands in mine, felt how small they still were. "She made a lot of bad choices," I said carefully. "None of them were because of you. Not one." He held on to that for a moment. Then he leaned into me, forehead against my chest. "I'm glad you believed me," he said. That was it. That was the moment. Not the arrest, not the confession, not the fire. That sentence, because that was the debt I'd almost never paid. The weeks after blurred together. Interviews, statements, courtrooms that smelled like old paper and coffee. Words like conspiracy and attempted murder thrown around like they belonged to someone else's life. She never looked at me again. Not in the interrogation room. Not in court. Not when the verdict came back guilty on every count. 25 years. People asked how I felt. I told them the truth. Numb. We didn't rebuild the house. I sold the land. I couldn't stand the idea of Evan sleeping on the same ground where someone planned his death. We moved somewhere smaller, quieter, no gas lines, no shadows that looked like doorways at night. Evan started therapy. So did I. He stopped having nightmares every night. Then, every week. Then, only when something reminded him of smoke. I changed careers. I couldn't design systems anymore. Every blueprint felt like a weapon in waiting. So I taught instead. Safety. Failure analysis. What happens when people assume no one would ever misuse what you build? My students think I'm intense. They're not wrong. Sometimes Evan asks about her. Not with anger. With distance. Like asking about a storm that passed through town years ago. I answer what I can. I don't protect her image. I protect his truth. On quiet evenings, I watch him do homework at the kitchen table, tongue stuck out in concentration, alive and annoyed and ordinary. That's the victory. Not revenge. Not prison. Not justice. Life. Because the night my son grabbed my arm in an airport pickup lane and begged me not to go home, he didn't just save us from a fire. He saved me from becoming the kind of father who ignores the truth because it's inconvenient. And I will carry that lesson for the rest of my life. 3 years passed. Not quickly. Not cleanly. Time didn't heal anything the way people like to say. It just created space. Space between nightmares. Space between questions. Space between who we were and who we became. Evan grew taller. Quieter. He learned where the locks were in every place we lived. He checked them every night before bed, not because he was afraid anymore, but because routine made him feel in control. I didn't stop him. Control had been taken from him once. I wasn't going to take it again. The court terminated her parental rights. There wasn't much debate. Attempted murder of your own child tends to close that door permanently. I signed the paperwork with a hand that didn't shake and felt nothing afterward. No triumph, no satisfaction, just finality. The insurance money came through months later. Blood money. That's what it felt like. I put most of it into a trust Evan can't touch until he's older. College. Therapy. A future that doesn't smell like smoke. I donated the rest quietly. No plaques, no announcements. Just made sure it went somewhere that helped kids who wake up screaming for reasons no child should ever have. Evan started playing basketball, then soccer, then decided he hated both and wanted to build things instead. Bridges, he told me once. They connect people. Houses trap them. I didn't ask where that thought came from. I teach now. Engineering safety, failure analysis. I tell my students that systems don't usually fail all at once. They fail because people ignore small warnings, tiny cracks, things that feel inconvenient to question. I don't tell them why that lesson matters so much to me. Some nights, when the house is quiet and Evan is asleep, I still smell gasoline that isn't there. Trauma has a way of lying to your senses. I sit with it until it passes. I don't date. People ask about that too. The answer is simple. Trust is expensive. I'm still paying off the last time I gave it away without checking the fine print. Evan asks about her less now. When he does, it's not anger. It's curiosity. Trying to understand how someone can live in the same house, eat the same meals, kiss the same child goodnight, and still plan their death. I don't have an answer that satisfies either of us. Maybe there isn't one. What I do know is this. If I hadn't believed him that night, if I'd driven us home like I almost did, none of this would exist. No basketballs in the driveway, no homework at the kitchen table, no quiet mornings where life feels almost normal again. Just ash. So when people ask me what haunts me most, It's not the fire, not the trial, not even her confession. It's how close I came to ignoring the truth because it didn't fit my schedule. My son saved our lives by trusting his instincts. I saved ours by finally trusting him. And that's the only reason we're still here. I don't tell this story out loud very often. Not because it hurts too much, because people hear what they want to hear. They want it to be about bravery, about instincts, about some heroic father who suddenly became sharp at exactly the right moment. That's not the truth. The truth is I almost failed. I almost drove us home. I almost told him he was tired. I almost chose routine over attention. That's the part that stays with me, some nights. Evan asks me what would have happened if we'd gone inside. He asks it casually now, like he's asking about a movie he watched a long time ago. I answer honestly, we wouldn't have woken up. He nods, accepts it. Kids who survive things like that don't flinch from truth. They flinch from lies. He's older now, taller than he should be for his age. He walks with that quiet awareness you only get when you've learned early that adults can be wrong. Sometimes I catch him watching people the way he used to watch me. Measuring, listening, filing things away. That scares me, and it makes me proud. Because vigilance isn't paranoia when you've seen what ignoring signs can cost. Every once in a while, I think back to that airport lane, the cold air, the routine goodbye, the moment I thought my biggest concern was a quiet weekend alone. I think about how clean the lie was, how polished, how easy it was to believe because it looked like everything else I'd already accepted. That's the real danger, not the fire, not the men in black hoodies, not even the betrayal. It's the comfort. Comfort tells you not to look too closely. Comfort tells you not to ask questions. Comfort tells you the people you love must be safe, because it's easier than imagining they're not. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. Pay attention to the people who go quiet. Listen to the ones who watch instead of speak. And when a child tells you they're afraid, don't talk them out of it, because sometimes fear isn't imagination. Sometimes it's information, and sometimes believing it is the difference between a normal night and the rest of your life. There's one detail I don't usually mention until the very end, because it doesn't sound dramatic. It doesn't sound cinematic. But it's the thing that tells me we really made it out. Every night, before Evan goes to bed, he checks the locks. Front door or back door, garage. He doesn't rush. He doesn't panic. He just checks them, one by one. The way I check my phone before a flight, or my stove before leaving the house. Then he comes to me and says, "All good." For a long time, that phrase used to break me, because what he was really saying was, "We're safe tonight." And for a while, safety felt temporary, conditional, like something that could be taken away if I stopped paying attention for even a second. But slowly, without either of us noticing the exact moment it happened, all good stopped being a defense mechanism. It became routine, normal, the good kind. He sleeps through the night now. No jolting awake, no smoke in his dreams. The therapists say his brain finally learned the danger past. Mine's taking longer. I still wake up early. Still scan rooms when I walk in. Still notice exits. Still trust patterns more than promises. I don't think that ever fully goes away, and that's okay, because what we lost that night wasn't just a house. We lost the luxury of being naive. But what we gained mattered more. We gained truth. We gained awareness. We gained each other. My son learned that his voice matters, that fear doesn't mean weakness, that being quiet doesn't mean being wrong. I learned that listening is an action, not a courtesy. Sometimes people tell me I'm strong. I don't correct them. But strength wasn't what saved us. Attention did, the kind that shows up even when it's inconvenient, the kind that questions comfort, the kind that believes the truth even when it's terrifying. So if there's one thing I'd leave behind from all of this, it's not advice. It's a reminder. The most dangerous lies are the ones that look like routine, and sometimes The smallest voice in the car is the only one telling you the truth. We're still here. That's not luck. That's listening.